wife's doing right now.
Well, I brought mine too.
Did you really?
I did. I brought that and my tax payments.
Good for you.
So,
You ready? Okay, everybody, let's go ahead and get started. All right, it's 9 o'clock. Looks like we have a quorum. So go on to the first item. Do we have any public comments on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, moving on to the approval of last meeting's minutes. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion, motion and a second. Any discussion? There was one thing I saw in there about the dog tags. Did we say we were going to prorate that, or it was just so little that we're not going to? Yeah, I think that was in there. Oh.
I thought it was.
Yeah, section 2, annual permit fee, prorate costs on monthly basis, says receive recommendation, approval, vote from Beach Management Committee.
Yeah, that was erroneous on my part.
So we're just gonna leave it at $40. I mean, that's so little, I don't think it barely covers the clerical costs. Okay,
I did change that in my subsequent public meetings and discussions with individual county commissioners that actually did not receive a recommendation for approval from this committee.
okay.
I made an error when I put that document together.
Okay, I guess we need do we need a new motion? New motion?
We need to make a motion to amend the minutes to show that that is an error.
Okay, so we just make an approval based on the amendment?
Right.
Can we do that? Okay, we have a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion, second. Motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Okay, Matt, you got a coastal management update for us?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a while since we've last met. The hurricanes kind of threw us for a loop here for our last meeting, but a couple months ago we had drafted the storm response plan. We've discussed this quite a bit at our last few meetings, kind of following the movement of the HSDR project and the decision to have that project tabled. We needed to have some plan on the book, so to speak, or on the shelf, to where we're still proactively managing the coastline and collecting data and moving forward in a proper manner. So this was what resulted from those conversations. I'll just kind of briefly review. I think you guys have all been provided copies, so we really just gave a brief history of what's happened as far as coastal management in Walton County. We talk about some pre-storm activities that are proposed, data collection, beach monitoring data, beach profiles, doing structure inventories every 5 to 10 years, making sure we have a good inventory of the infrastructure that's out in the coastal zone, some proactive permitting, a countywide beach restoration project, or some emergency permitting immediately prior to a storm, some funding and outreach programming. The outreach we're already doing a pretty good job of. You know, once a year we do our State of the Beach presentation. Once every 2 months we have this Beach Management Committee. As you all know, while we're doing a good job, no one really kind of pays attention until there's a hurricane, and you know we're really on the clock at that point in time. But having our ducks in a row and having these plans in place should ease that process. And then we kind of go into post-storm activities, a lot of which are the same, you know, doing some data collection after the fact, seeing where we have areas that have eroded, structures that are vulnerable. Those will help guide our management decisions. And then we kind of go through the alternatives of post-storm activities. So that's pretty much it. You guys have all been provided a copy of the plan. I'm just here to answer any questions, and whether you have them now or later, you know, a week from now, a month from now, y'all can always reach out to me anytime. I think we're going to leave the plan in draft form for a short period of time until we can get a number of comments, and then we'll formalize it and put it on the shelf.
Well, thanks, Matt. Any comments or questions?
I just want to compliment you because it was a really thorough report, and it was a really long report, but it was really, really thorough. And I thought you did a good job of making it clear that this is not like a mandate, and we're not resurrecting something that was voted against, which I commend you for. And I also liked how you talked about the various alternatives for getting information from the state and other agencies that do surveying after storms and things like that to help save Walton County money. I thought that was a really helpful area. And the last but not least was your discussion of sand. And I thought you did a really good job. You and your team of people did a really good job on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. It took us a while, and it is a pretty in-depth study. We could have done a 100-page report on the history of coastal management in Walton County, but kind of condensing it down into the 20 or 30 pages it is was the challenge. But that's a very good point as far as the outreach. I think if y'all could, I really would like to hear your thoughts on, are we doing a good job? I think the Beach Management Committee does a great job, but as we all know, after a storm, whether it be an oil spill, a hurricane, or tropical storm, everyone's kind of in panic mode. So making sure we get the information out ahead of the storm, we have the plan in place, we review that information, let's say, April, May, before storm season kicks off, here's our plan of action should we have a storm event. That's really going to be the most critical, but should we be doing more in a social media realm? Is the once a year beach update enough? I think so. What we put in the report was, maybe immediately prior to a storm and immediately following the storm, making sure we get the input from the folks that are living out on the shoreline, working with Brian and his group to see, how the county's infrastructure fared. Any guidance you'd have on there, I think would be certainly helpful.
What's the status of the signs and stuff, from the property owners, private beach signs and stuff?
That particular code section will be revised in this next round of code revisions, but we've been told by our legal department to stand down based on the judge's ruling on that. So that was section 2255, post rope signs on the beach. And as you know, the plaintiff filed suit based on First Amendment rights discrimination and was successful. And so there are ways to go around regulating signage on the beach. The way we did at that time with basically a blanket, cannot do, did prohibit him from exercising his First Amendment rights. So,
on private property.
Pardon me?
On private property.
Correct. As you know, some property in Walton County is owned down in the main high water line. And one of the persons that filed suit has that situation. So at this point, the county is looking at ways that they can adopt a code that serves that purpose. And so they're exploring, legal ways to do that.
Limiting the amount of signs or the size of the sign or stuff like that?
I think there's ways you can do it. You can do it by certain time periods, and also by size restriction and format. Like I said, those are all questions that the legal department has to pursue and then answer, get answered themselves. So
I just see it as more debris on the beach when the storms hit.
I figured as soon as that passed, people would start doing what they did 2.5, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And but it hadn't really happened. And so the people that do want to do it have contacted me. I've asked them to understand that responsible signage tends to be accepted more than irresponsible signage. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
And so hopefully people will do that, or we'll come to a code revision that works for everybody. So.
What about the beach mats? What's the permitting on that? What's the status? And
we met with FDEP a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago. They had cut back our plan tremendously, and So we somewhat negotiated with them what we felt was a good compromise of what they would allow and what we wanted or needed. It all had to do with the length of the beach and the spurs that go out. And so we came up with 20 feet past the vegetation line and keeping 2 spurs. And so we resubmitted that, and we've been told that it has been approved by the project manager and is on the desk of the FDEP department manager for approval.
What's a
But
beach mat?
Moby.
Handicap,
this is
ADA
a,
beach mats.
Nylon woven textile mat that allows people in regular wheelchairs to get down on the beach. So anyway, that's where we are with it. And they asked when we can expect a response. The answer was soon.
Oh, I've worked with the DEP, I know.
2020.
What's the process if a storm's coming to remove those? Do you have a plan
Sail
to?
down by aluminum stakes, pull the stakes out, roll the mat up, put them back in the truck.
No, doesn't take any time to get it off the
We would
beach?
have to do periodic maintenance on it anyway,
Yeah.
meaning roll it up, shake the sand out of it, smooth the sand back out, roll it back out.
Mm-hmm, okay.
So, anyway, there was also some issues with it being installed during turtle season. I think we've gotten around that. It may be that it goes in before turtle season and it stays down until after turtle season. But, I explained to them that we GPS map all the nests. And where the nests are, we certainly wouldn't put a stake through a nest. And that offered them some comfort, but, they wouldn't say yay or nay as to what their attitude was. Been very frustrating.
Yeah. You want to say something?
Yeah, I have a question about this beach mats. When we interfere with the other life that lives in sand, like crabs and birds that feed on bacteria in sand?
That's probably something that all goes into the permitting process, the review process. I know Fish and Wildlife is part of it. So,
But somebody's asking that question.
excuse me?
Yeah.
Somebody's asking that.
Yeah, the mats are 5 feet wide. They're temporary in nature. The people that designed the mats have done extensive work with FWC and FDEP as to what is acceptable to the environment. And this seems to be the best solution. So, it's a compromise of helping handicapped people enjoy the beach like everybody else does, and still, accommodating the wildlife that lives on the beach as well.
Okay, but they don't go all the way down to the water.
No, they don't.
So.
20 feet past the vegetation.
Are still trapped up by the beach.
No, ma'am, they're not, but they can crawl over that.
I'm sorry, the handicap people can crawl.
No, I'm sorry, they're talking about the animals.
No, what I'm saying is that the beach mats don't really solve the problem for handicapped people because the handicapped people still only have 5 feet of mat to sit on and they can't get all the way to the water. So really the beach mats don't solve the problem of wheelchairs on the beach.
They do, they get the people down on the flat sandy portion of the beach.
Okay, but they still can't get to the water. Okay,
Well, and we actually have another way for that. We have beach wheelchairs
Yeah.
that can go.
I know, I've seen them, they're terrible, they work poorly. I am currently working on an invention for a beach wheelchair. Right, that won't necessitate putting any object on the beach that would damage the sand. So anyways, I just
Very good.
wanted to ask if anybody was considering that.
Appreciate you.
Matt, back to your original question, you're talking about us as far as social media and hurricanes. What's the current policy now? Do you put out a mass social media at the beginning of hurricane season, then do you also do another one once we have possibly a hurricane that could be affecting our area?
Yeah, it's still in a state of flux right now. I don't think David's here, but we typically work with David, and a lot of it comes from the Walton County's emergency management group. If there are issues on the beach, such as after Ivan, the Miramar beach access was completely destroyed. There was a lot of public notices that went out informing the public that that access was closed. So we will use social media as much as we can. I was more leaning toward how do we get the beach owners involved in post-storm activities. You know, who wants to see a dune restoration? Who wants to see the potential for beach restoration? Who wants to see just, you know, some dune vegetation work? How do we gauge the temperature of the actual property owners, so we're not spinning our wheels moving forward with other initiatives?
Okay.
So.
My name is Lori Reichenbach. I would, having come to my first meeting with you guys and hearing you speak, I would love to see general educational, proactive, positive information on the Walton County ideas for quality of life. It's a locals Facebook site. There are really good discussions on there, and I think educational formatted information, you know, in the event of, here is. I think that, what do you think, Lisa? I mean, you're on there, and I think that's a good format for getting a conversation going.
I think that's a good idea. I also know from past experience that if we present it in a positive way, that we could probably get a pretty comprehensive email list of beachfront owners and be able to communicate with them. You know, especially if it's on a volunteer basis, you know, where they can say, yes, I'd like sand, yes, I'd like sea oats, and it clearly defines what you're agreeing to when you get those things. But I know when the whole situation was going on with HSDR, we had a really comprehensive list of emails at one point, and then it got taken over by somebody else that, you know, used it a different way than it was intended originally. But nevertheless, it was a pretty comprehensive list of emails, and I have no idea how accurate it is today, because that was what,
Well,
3 years ago.
Yeah, maybe our best plan of action at this point in time, and this is a living document. This is by no means meant to just, you know, hey, we're done and we're going to put it on the shelf for 20 years. We're always going to be updating and modifying as needs change. But, you know, we've all been to the State of Beach presentations that I give. They're rarely attended. If there was a hurricane, I can guarantee you we'd have a packed house. You know, you look at some of those HSDR meetings. So when we do the next State of the Beach meeting, we make sure we advertise it as well as we possibly can. And at that meeting, we gauge the temperature of, you know, a hypothetical scenario. If we were to have a storm event, how would you folks like to hear the information come across? Is social media the best platform? Is a standardized TDC website the best platform? And then we take it from there.
On to the Facebook site though, and one group of owners that I think are kind of left out is not the primary home or rental home, but the condo associations. So I happen to invest in one of those, and I know that many of our condo owners are members of that group, but we didn't really get any public format. I mean, we as a HOA voted for the beach renourishment project. We were part of that 5%. But in general, the individual investors of condos usually don't hear about this kind of stuff. And if they're beachfront, they're a beachfront owner. So that would be one positive for doing a Walton County Facebook educational thing and prep people.
And that's one of the problems, Lori.
Educated ahead of time, they might be more positive.
Absolutely.
About what's coming their
Yeah.
way in the event of catastrophe.
And that's exactly our mission.
Was
I
there?
appreciate that.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. After the two recent hurricanes, I know one was the north wind, one was south wind. But did we have any more extensive beach erosion in those critical places? I know one was around Blue Mountain. Is there any permanent damage to the?
No, we saw, and Brian could probably speak to this better than I could, but it's all the typical hot spots. You know, Blue Mountain, the far eastern end of the county tends to suffer more than the western end. everything that I saw was, you know, some scarping of the dunes. The water elevation came up quite a bit to the toe of the dunes in some area, but I don't know if there was anywhere that I saw that was catastrophic by any means. But we did get pretty lucky. You know, those storms would have taken a little slight turn east or west. It could have been much worse. So.
I was fascinated by what the north wind did to my beach. It was like the lowest tide ever. I mean, and I understand Mobile Bay kind of emptied out, and Pensacola Bay went down quite a bit. Did you measure any of that kind of?
We have like a 1 foot tide, and Chalkahatchee Bay especially is more weather dominated than tide dominated. You get a heavy south wind, and you got an extra 1.5 feet of water, and the same thing with the north wind. All of a sudden, you lost a foot or two.
Matt, I don't remember, what was the cost of the dredged sand? Do you remember when we were doing the HSDR project?
I don't. I know the overall project cost was somewhere on the order of $50 million.
Yeah, you don't remember a cubic yard price? It was
No,
real low, like $4 a yard or something?
Yeah, it was a bit higher. I think budgetary estimates that we tend to stick with are somewhere around $6 to $8 a cubic yard. And then on top of that, you tend to have a $1 million or sometimes even $2 million mobilization cost for the dredge to be here. So that's why projects of scale are much more economically beneficial than, you know, just filling in one small dune. So
yeah, I just bought a bunch of sand from Sykes, and it's pretty pricey.
And that I think we touch on that a little bit in the report. You know, in cost comparisons, on average, a small to medium scale beach restoration project is going to be around $10 a cubic yard at the end of the day. Going to somewhere such as Sykes or having a dune restoration project, you're going to pay $30 plus. But if you're a single homeowner and all you have a small section of area to do, that's a pretty easy decision to make. So.
Well, thanks, Matt. Anything else? Anybody?
No, but you know, we're here all the time. So if y'all have any comments or think about something tonight, you know, please send us all an email. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay, let's move on. New business. Beach Management Committee application.
Okay, as you know, every 2 years, we do appointments and reappointments for the next 2 years. And so that 2018 starts a new 2-year period. So, Stacy, did you include the application in here?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we'll be advertising, you know, through different means of, to the, you know, community here of, we have these, you know, seats available, what seat are not available, but, what seats are on the, Beach Management Committee, and be receiving applications, they'll be reviewed, recommendations made, and then, decisions made on filling the seats. So, I know some of you have come on during the 2-year period, but it starts a new 2-year period. So if you're still interested in working on the committee, we appreciate you filling out a new application. And as well as if you can get the word out in the community that, you know, this is coming up. So we'll make these decisions during the month of December so that the new people or reappointed people will be ready to go on January. So that's what it's about. Any questions, comments about it?
Do we necessarily know, is it staggered, or do we know, or is it a whole?
Actually, it's not staggered. The way it has been set up is that every 2 years we do, we accept applications and we make a 2-year appointment. And there's been some discussion here recently about making it staggered. But since we're up against a new thing, we're just going to go ahead and proceed as we have been doing. The people that have been on it for 2 years know that it almost staggers itself by people that get on and then can't fulfill the commitment or have other things come up or decide that it's not their, cup of tea, so to speak. And so we have, we almost, de facto staggers itself, but In the future, we may do that, and then it would be a one-year appointment for the first time, and then we would, then get into a 2-year, but it would be a staggered by half of the committee. So, like I say, if you're interested in continuing to serve, you please fill out your application and get it to Stacy. I believe, do we have an electronic format? We'll convert the PDF into a fillable form and email it out, because it's probably easier for y'all to do that. If you want to do it by hand, feel free to do it by hand, scan it or mail it or hand off to Stacy, and just do it as quick as you can so that we can be making decisions.
This one says termination, resignation of membership
That's the back sheet.
on this sheet right here.
Top sheet, is that the only one in there?
Oh, in this one.
Yeah,
The third sheet?
yeah, the application.
Right, there's a copy of it.
Yeah, I got a copy right here. Yeah, we'll tell you what, don't worry about that form you have in your thing. We will
Good catch.
get the correct one. Sorry.
So Brian, as we get the word out in our respective communities, by when would these be
I'm
due
sorry,
back?
what?
By when would these be due? An application, somebody wanted to apply?
I don't know, we'll be making decisions, probably mid-December. So I'll discuss with Jay this week, if we want to set a deadline date. It'll probably be the first week in December.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, going on to old business.
Okay.
You wanna,
I'll give you a bit on that. Okay, so we went through a couple other meetings, public workshop after TDC meeting and then a public workshop. We received more input. All that input was compiled and then sent to Walton County Legal Department to have the appropriate verbiage generated, developed, that would be what would be called the draft version of the code that would subsequently be adopted at the formal public hearing. And so we had hoped to have all that in place for the November 7th meeting, which is today, but the legal department was not able to do that. And so it will now be possibly scheduled for November 28th. We will seek direction from the BCC today at the regular meeting as to when they would like that presented to them. As you know, they have indicated they would like to get this wrapped up before the end of the year. And so November 28th is the next regular meeting. Unfortunately, that's in Defuniak Springs, and they may decide that they don't want to hear it there because it is a South County issue, and they may delay it until the first meeting in December. That meeting's already wrapped up with a lot of other business because they have a short meeting in the second meeting in December. So anyway, we'll know this afternoon as to when that will be presented. And so the next phase of this is we present. They then take that list of presented items, pare it down as they would like, which ones they want to consider, and then they will turn back around at that same meeting and vote on each one of those items. Or they may do the list with the verbiage in there and say, do a blanket approval. In other words, they pick out the ones they want to consider, and they say, we consider all of them as they're written, and we vote to approve them or not approve them. I feel that since some of the commissioners have different ideas about different things, that they probably will take them out individually and discuss them individually. From there, that will give direction to the county attorney to clean up that draft version and have it ready for a formal adoption hearing at the, whatever the next meeting that it can be heard based on the appropriate notification time. What's that, is that 14 days, Jay? Yes. So 14 days for a public hearing has to be noticed. So if it was at the 28th meeting, it wouldn't be able to make the December 10th meeting. It would probably then go to the second meeting in December and or maybe the first meeting in January. But we will know more about that I encourage you to pay attention to the upcoming BCC agendas to know definitively what's going to be on there. We will send out an email to this committee of what's going to happen so that you'll be informed of it. But as always, it's good to make yourself aware of everything.
Will that draft from legal be available to the public before that meeting?
It will be. In fact, you know, what comes out of the meeting either on the 28th or the 10th, I think the 10th is the first meeting in December, will be is it the 12th? 12th. Will be what is, be contained in the final draft version to be adopted. And then that will definitely be published when the agenda is published.
Got it.
For whatever meeting the public hearing will be heard.
But even before the BCC even looks at it to see what they want to talk about, it'll be on that agenda online,
It
correct?
will be, correct.
Got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
I was thinking about something after our last meeting, and about the beach vendors
Yes.
and using the beach to make money, basically.
Right.
And the weddings, for instance, the wedding planners using the beach to make money.
Correct.
You know, they're advertising beach weddings and stuff like that. But like the officiant, the photographer, the musician, they're using the wedding to make money.
Right.
Not necessarily using the beach. They'd probably rather be in an auditorium than out, you know, or in a banquet hall than in the sand.
Right.
So I don't know if there really should be vendors. They're really not using the beach. They're not advertising the beach.
Who's not?
The wedding planner is, but like the musician that the wedding planner hires, or the officiant that the wedding planner hires, or the photographer that the wedding planner
Yeah.
hires. And I know now they're all under one umbrella, but it doesn't seem like they're using the wedding, or I mean the beach to make money. They're using the wedding to make money.
But the wedding's on the beach.
And yeah,
Yeah.
but that's,
Well, what we're doing is an attempt to make sure that, that we know what's going on the beach, we know who's doing business on the beach, and as well as making sure that those people are in the loop of information of changes to beach codes. We've done this. We proposed that a service vendor type permit be established that has a reduced fee because we realize they're a low impact vendor. So that does two things: is we know who's on the beach, and they stay informed of beach related code changes. But part of the main reason for that is because of the definition of vending is offering goods or services for a fee on the beach. The other industries were pointing fingers at those people that if I have to be permitted because I'm offering a good or a service for a fee, then why don't those people have to be permitted? See what I'm saying? Because technically they're offering because there's several different types of weddings. There's a wedding that's planned by a wedding planner that encompasses all of the subcontractors or vendors underneath it. And if you're doing that, you don't have to be a permitted vendor. The other types of weddings are, they go down in scale. Like today, we permitted a wedding that is two people, bride and groom, and their parents, and an officiant. They don't have a wedding planner, all right? And so, you know, we recognize that there's different things, but the officiant is getting paid to provide that good or service for a fee. And so, in order to be consistent and treat everybody fairly, he's offering a good or service for a fee, he needs to be a permitted vendor.
I understand it. But
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like, you know, I mean, they wouldn't advertise it, you know, I mean, a wedding planner that does beach weddings advertises, you know, weddings on the beach, but the musician, you know, he advertises that he does weddings, probably doesn't say anything about the beach, you know, so.
I passed a trailer the other day that had on there, DJ music specializing in beach weddings. And I was like, took a picture, gave to our ladies and said,
Make sure he's got a permit.
let this person know what the permit is required.
Okay, well, thank you, Brian.
You bet. Moving on.
Okay. September code enforcement report, Lisa? Did you
Yeah,
wanna
I
talk
just
about that?
basically, on that, I just wanted to see what the, kind of the end of the season had brought. I mean, I know we had some things in October with fall breaks and all, but it appeared to be fairly quiet in October. Would that be accurate, Brian?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't print out the October report. It actually hasn't been completely compiled and published. We run about a week behind on getting everything done.
Yeah.
And since October, was the new month, we actually changed some of the things or how we collect the data. We refined it even further. And so I don't have October, but it was equal to September, or actually there was probably a little bit more because of the fall break. But
Yeah.
I will be glad to send that to everybody as soon as it is published in its final version.
Well, there are very, very few citations, which, what is largely, hopefully, because of compliance and the fact that we were just educating this year. So that was noticed. The only thing that concerned me at looking at it was that there are, on some of the violations, there are a good many that fall into the other category.
Right.
I'm making the assumption, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that many of those, it was because they simply were not addressed because they couldn't get to them, or when they got there, they were gone, or they couldn't find, the dogs off leash, or whatever. Would that be correct?
Right. That and we gained immediate compliance. And so with the tent issue, for example, in regards to customary use, a lot of the times there was a immediate understanding because the people were truly ignorant of the code, and being responsible citizens did not want to be non-compliant, pulled up their tent and left. And so we didn't categorize that as a verbal warning or a written warning or a citation. And since there's not, we didn't really want to call it in compliance, so we
Okay.
stuck it in the form of other. And there's other reasons why that happens as well, but I have spoken with our code enforcement manager, and that, because I too recognize that the other category in disposition across the different categories had become higher than what I would like for it to be. And so that was another thing of why we revised our data collection items, was to have more places to put stuff so that it wouldn't become an other or not show exactly what it is. As you know, this data collection system's been refined over the last couple of years. We collect everything in MS Access. It's then converted to Excel spreadsheets that produce these pretty graphs. And across chapters 22 and 23, there's probably 24 different categories. Some of them we don't have much activity in, and so we had lumped those, previously we had lumped those together into a miscellaneous, or just recognize that it would be in that particular category. So we pulled all those out. So what you'll see in the future in this next report is more categories. And then in the disposition, since we found that we have some areas where our disposition is not a written warning or a citation, verbal warning, or compliance. Another one for tenants is that we get a complaint and we get there and there's nobody there. There is no tent, there's nobody there, and so that's another.
Okay, well, that sounds good. I like the way the things are reported in terms of spelling a lot of things out, but that was the only thing I noticed, is there were just so many in some categories. There were so many, such a big percentage was other.
Yeah.
And it's like, what does that mean?
Yeah, I agree. I don't like to see other, because it indicates that, to me, there should be 4 actions. It's compliant, they received a warning, be it verbal or written, or there's a citation. But we have to recognize now that there are some others. But I've asked, like in the case of the tents, if we encounter a tent going forward this year and we get compliance, okay, we get there and they immediately remove it, I've asked for that to be issued as a verbal warning. Okay? Because it really was.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Well, you gotta document that too, because if they got the tent set up the next day,
Well, it is documented, so if
You
you
need to
go
know
to
if
each
it was-
case, all right, so we, you know, our customized access, you know, entry form is set up so that we can put in notes and all that. And so that gives you the true story. But to publish those, I mean, you know, we had 9,900 contacts last year. And so obviously we can't produce, I mean, this, for September, we had 924. If I publish every one of those incident sheets, you know, it'd be 2 reams of paper. And so, you know, but, you know, it's like I say, if I see anomalies in some things, or if I want to know what happened in a particular incident, I can always go look at that, you know, and determine what happened. But-
is there any kind of protocol? I mean, if the beachgoer's nice, then you issue a verbal warning, the next time is automatic, you know, citation, or you just kind of play it by ear? Is there any kind of
We use,
protocol?
you know, officer discretion plays a big part on what we do on the beach. But we follow the Florida Statute 162 Code Enforcement, you know, how it says that we can do our business. And so, you know, if we encounter a person on the beach the first day and we ask them to, you explain the code to them and explain, you know, what they can do to become compliant, and they immediately react to it, we all go our separate ways, and it, you know, became an other. If they are obstinate about it, we still can't give them a citation unless it's a safety or public health issue. That's the only way we can give a citation without giving a warning and a notice to cure. So code enforcement statute requires that we notify them they're in violation, and we give them appropriate amount of time to cure that. And so how do we determine what that amount of time is? In the issue of, I go back to tents, because that was a hot item last year. Tents from customary use. What affects that period of cure time is a lot of things. Time of day, amount of people and stuff with the tent, age of people with the tent, and their attitude, okay? So, for instance, if they're down there and they have elderly and infants and it's 10 o'clock in the morning, we would ask them, you know, to remove it, you know, when they leave for lunch, or if they're going to leave for lunch and all that. If it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we would ask them to not bring it back the next day. If it's a bunch of teenagers down there, you know, with, you know, large amounts of beverage, playing music, we would say, hey guys, you need to wrap her up and get her off the beach. And if they got an attitude, it would probably become a safety and health violation issue. And then, you know, press
I'm just thinking if, you know, somebody was compliant and they said, you know, sure, I'll take the tent down, and so it just goes in other, you said now, this next year, it's gonna be a verbal warning.
Right.
I guess that's what I'm thinking. If it's not a warning, and you come back the person was compliant,
Oh,
took
no,
the tent
no,
down.
it goes in the database.
Well, but you come back the next day, if the person's back, set the tent up, you can't give them a citation then, because
no,
you
it-
never
it-
gave them the first
No,
verbal
even though
warning.
it's an other, we still collect their information. So the first thing we do is we encounter somebody that is in a non-compliant state. We ask for identification, we take all that down.
Yeah, but didn't you say that the statutes dictate that you can't give them a citation, you have to give them a verbal warning, and,
No, we have to give them a notice of violation or non-compliant behavior. And so an other is that. In other words, when we say.
okay, so
when we
other
say,
is a,
You're in a non-compliant, you know, situation here. That serves as a notice of violation.
okay.
I guess it should be termed as notice of non-compliant behavior.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got you.
So that was the whole purpose of the access database, that all officers can have access to real time. And so the next day, when Officer B is there and he encounters this, he can, you know, look through there. And of course, we
You know what I'm gonna say now.
what?
Oh,
Somebody
yeah.
uses a different name or
No,
what.
they don't look for the dogs.
Well, they do.
But
We did-
yeah,
we
they,
did.
I think dogs have been, I see less dogs off leash now
Mhm.
than at the beginning of the season. And I've had people complain to me when I was doing my volunteer beach ambassador thing
Mhm.
about the fact they can't let their dog run loose anymore. So I do think it has helped, whether yours are well behaved or not. Not everybody's, because a lot
Yeah.
of them chase birds and the herons and all that good
Once
stuff.
again, we have two types of visitors to the beach. We have the 7-day visitor that comes down and probably is ignorant of the law, even though they got to pass 2 signs to get there. And so getting them compliant is them encountering an officer. And then we have the permanent resident lives here, and they make a decision based on whether they're going to see a code enforcement officer at that particular time or day as to what their behavior is going to be. And that's why we have. I mean, it's popular around the coastal dune lakes to go let your dog run. It happens to be the worst place to do it because of the shore life and all that. But we do have people like you, John, that completely comply. But part of our efforts is we have to check for the permit. And so I gave you some suggestions last time. I had another suggestion. Are you familiar with the Greyhound racing aprons they put on the dogs? You need to get one of those with your permit number.
Very good. Yeah.
John-
Yeah, that's just a little intrusive, though, to be stopped every day to ask
I know
for
it
your
is.
permit
I
number.
know.
And, I mean, particularly when it goes in the database and everybody knows that John's on Dune Allen Beach fishing between 5:30 and 7:30 with his dog Sadie, and
You know,
leave him alone.
I
He's
check-
already been checked, the
I
permit's
check that during
good.
pompano season so I know where the good fishing holes are.
Well, what I want to know is, did you have a good attitude when they approached you about it? See, that may be why they're picking on you.
Well, the 4th time in the same week, no, my attitude was bad. It was
See,
bad.
you're going to be out
Yeah.
forever now.
It was bad.
I have a
know.
question, Brian, and I don't know if this is even possible, but our beach ambassador, our paid beach ambassadors, I'm talking about now, our volunteers did a great job, but our paid ones, is there a way that when they make contact, because they did a fabulous job of that this year, can it count as a verbal notice?
No, because they're not certified code enforcement officers.
And there's no way, since,
Can we send them to training?
yeah, or something?
Well, we can, but then they'd be code enforcement officers. So they have a function on the beach, and that is, fun, energetic, informative, because they inform about more than just codes. They inform about beach etiquette. And last year, we were fairly successful with being static at regional beach accesses and some neighborhood beach accesses. You'll see more of that in the year coming up. I found that if I can catch people coming out of the parking lot, headed down the boardwalk, that we can get more people, and it's just more effective. But no, like I say, they have a specific function, and we have a function for code enforcement, so we don't need them doing that.
Well, that was one of the things that came up, is people were very receptive to them. They got a lot of compliance.
Yeah.
But if they weren't there the next day, sometimes poof, the tent popped back up or whatever. And unfortunately, at that point, code enforcement had to attend to it. And
Right.
it could only be a verbal, because code enforcement didn't have to come the day before because the beach ambassadors handled it. So that, if there was a way to
Yeah.
somehow do that, that would be a wonderful.
The solution to that
improvement.
would be to put code enforcement static at
Yeah,
particular boardwalks, which we maybe do some of that too.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. Last item. Lisa, do you want to talk about?
Yes, my
signage?
last item was partially in relation to one you've already brought up. There's a couple of things. I realize we're still waiting for court decisions on customary use, so I realize things can change, but the little bitty signs that went on the bigger signs
Right.
are just simply too small. People aren't seeing them, they're not reading them. It's questionable whether people read our big signs that have a bunch of information on them, but they sure aren't reading these. So one of the things that I wanted, I don't even know this is our purview, but I would like to see us do something that at least identifies every single beach access is either a public one or a restricted use one, or customary use, or whatever it is that Walton County would see fit. I've made this suggestion via email to the commissioners anyway, as a private citizen person. But right now, I had this one gentleman that was the rare exception that actually read everything on the signs that were at the top of a walkover by the parking lot area. And he was really cute, because he said, I said to him, I'm so impressed, you're reading all the information there. And he said, yeah, but I'm confused. And I said, well, what's confusing you? He said, well, this little sign says it was the customary use information. This little sign had like beach ordinance rules that were applied to all the beaches. And he said, this one says I can have a tent 6 by 6, and this one says I can't. Where am I? He said, am I at one I can or can't?
Yeah, good point.
And I said, good point. And I said, I will bring that to the attention of the powers that be that, can help with that sort of thing. So that's part of it. Then the other part of beach messaging is, I know that nobody loves the idea of a bunch of private property signs, including, believe it or not, the private property owners. So another private citizen suggestion I have made about signs is that, and I don't know where the commission will go with these things, they're just ideas, but is to, instead of having a bunch of private property signs, to have signs at each end, east and west, of public beaches. So you only have 2 signs that way. You have one that says leaving public beach on this end and leaving public beach on that end, and maybe you add to it. I sent them some sample verbiage and stuff, and you may have seen that stuff, Brian. I don't know if they've shared it with you, but then all of a sudden you've only got a very limited number of signs, because they identified just the public beach boundaries. Walton County has complete control over the size, the color, the message, blah, blah, blah. And if that were done in a very consistent way, and in a way that made it clear, I believe, I could be wrong, I've been wrong before, but I believe it would help alleviate the desire of private property owners to feel that they have to have a bunch of individual signs that say this is my private property. Now, whether that goes anywhere or not, we'll see, but that was really what this was about, and I don't know if this particular committee takes any position on signage or not, but
I think it's a good idea to identify the beach as a public or private beach.
Yeah. So you say you've sent this to the county commissioners?
yes, I did.
Did you copy me?
They got a quite lengthy email of my, just citizen input to try to, I don't believe in telling them what I think are problems without giving them some solutions.
Good.
Now, whether they like my solutions or not could be an entirely different thing, but I did try to identify. And I love the way you say this. You say, Lisa, what problem are we trying to solve? And so that's what I did with my email. As I said, what problem are we trying to solve? Identified what that was, and then I identified one or more solutions that I thought might help. And we'll see what
probably
happens.
have forwarded that to county legal. They'll then confer with me, and obviously it won't be included in these code changes coming up. It could be, because they're trying to resolve the 2255 deal, but like I say, it may be some verbiage in there. My guess is it's going to be completely omitted for a time period until they can find a viable solution, and maybe that'll be part of the viable solution.
Lisa, on that idea, it doesn't necessarily have to be a sign. They could outlaw signs on the total beach, but still on public property at one end or the other, you could have a little bush of some sort, or a lighthouse decorative, something that fit in, to tell people this is what it is. Similar to like on a golf course, 75 yards out, they plant a certain kind of bush,
Oh, really? Okay.
all over. And it doesn't have to be a sign. It just says
Yeah.
that's, public property.
Yeah. I
And
think
that
the
way you
problem-
don't get into,
Yeah, I think the potential problem with anything that's not widely known is
Yeah.
that it does, if you don't know that that bush means something, yeah.
not all golfers know it either, but you can
Yeah.
put a little sign up in the parking lot, this is the
Yeah.
limits of public.
Is that
property.
something we need to vote on, some signage, or?
No, like I said, I think she was bringing it up for discussion. She's already sent it to the BCC. I would not recommend trying to interject this into the code revisions right now.
Yeah.
And I would assume that legal would say, we're working on 2255, and thanks for your input. So, it probably will come back before the committee at a later date, whenever that verbiage is, or that section of the code is being worked out again. So.
Well, that's all.
Okay. Any more comments? How about from the public? Any comments? Go ahead.
For future consideration, certainly not this year since it's drawing to an end, and I know terms are gonna, some will switch over, but I'm gonna put this above your ear. Holes, death traps on the beach. I don't really see anything in the code that allows our code officers to have conversation about holes. So, little kids with little shovels, everybody digs a hole. But, however you as a beach committee would define a death trap. So I'm just gonna make this up, take it as you will. Anything that's a foot deep and 3 feet wide or circular, or if you can lose a chair in it, you could lose a code enforcement truck in it. If you could play poker with a vast cooler of beer in it, that's a death trap. So if we have some code.
We outlawed the metal shovels.
Yeah,
Well,
look, it's still
yeah,
working.
but
Huh?
that's,
Still
I didn't
shows.
know.
Yeah.
you don't really need a metal shovel. All you need is a bucket and people scoop.
Well, that was, the intent of that was try to deter that a little bit and to minimize it to some
Based on-
extent.
We're okay, yeah.
Based on volunteer beach ambassador reports this summer and personal experience in the Walton Dunes, Deer Lake to Easter Lake area, most holes don't get dug with a spade. So that did not help a lot. I'm sure it helped a little. I'm just talking about code enforcement rolling up on a death trap and simply being able to have a code that allows them to have an interaction and just simply let someone know that this is a very dangerous situation for human life, and we have people who have massive surgeries after they fall in and break hips, and our turtles, both mothers and hatchlings. Could you fill in your hole at the end of the day?
Well, I think most of the beach ambassadors and most of the local beach goers tell people to do that. I know I do all the time, tell people to fill in their holes.
Sometimes that helps, and sometimes it doesn't. But when you
Well-
wear a badge and you have a truck that says code enforcement, and they have a regulation that they can refer to, so that's all I'm suggesting, is that it be considered for a code violation in order to give our code enforcement officers a real good opportunity just to have an interaction. Sorry.
John?
No, I was gonna say,
Mike.
our code enforcement officers do act like beach ambassadors in regards to holes. When we encounter a very big hole, when I say big, I'm talking about, deeper than 2 feet, regards to its diameter. We talk to the people, and we say, hey, listen, enjoy the hole, appreciate you fill it back in. Whenever you're writing code, you always have to think about the enforcement capability of it. And so when you put a size restriction, and we learned this on the tents, that you then spend an inordinate amount of time measuring and determining if that fits within that parameter. The other reason is Bay County did pass a hole ordinance, and it was 2 foot, larger than 2 foot diameter and larger than, I think, 2 feet deep. And they had this really, really bad PR situation where they arrested a preacher and his son for digging a hole. And so we would like to solve the whole problem through education and voluntary compliance, as opposed to having to codify it, where then we have limited leeway. All right, so if we have a hole that we say, okay, it can't be bigger than 3 feet by 1 foot by, 3 feet, so 3 foot square or 3 foot diameter by 1 foot deep, then we're out there being, okay, is it 1 foot? And then suppose it's 14 inches deep and it's a family that have come here for their first visit and they decide to dig their heels in the sand and they go home with a citation. You know what I mean? We really haven't solved the problem of hole digging. We've created a situation where we're now considered, bad people. And so if we can do it, and your people do a marvelous job of it, we hope to do more of it this year with a positive reason why you don't dig holes or leave holes. And we've really achieved our goal much better.
There is a beach somewhere in all my research online. There's a beach that actually has that rule, that the holes cannot be more than a foot deep.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall that it had one for how wide they could be, but they couldn't be more than a foot deep.
Yeah.
And the main thing that we benefit from with anything that's codified, obviously, is like if somebody trips up on, I know what Lori's talking about, there was this one hole that people had literally dug and put a chair down in it.
Yeah.
And it was like a miniature well. Well, if we had a code of some sort, then a code enforcement officer right then and there can say, fill it in. Where right now, can they do that? Or can they just sort of advise them, hey, it'd be nice if you would fill in your dangerous hole?
No, we can't mandate they fill in a hole. And to be quite honest with you, if it was codified, I don't think the code enforcement officer could then mandate it be filled in either.
It's a health and safety issue.
It is. We could issue them a ticket and we would probably have to fill it in ourselves. But once again,
Oh, okay, I
I
see
think
your
the better
point.
way to do that is to help the people understand why it's a bad deal. Because if they've dug that hole, I saw the picture you're talking about, the young kid dug the hole, put the chair down in it.
Yeah.
If he can be educated as to why that's dangerous to himself, then maybe he won't dig a hole next week on the next beach he goes to. See what I'm saying? And that's why, I think it's better if you can convince people in a positive manner as to why their behavior is not good. I mean, that's what codes are for. Codes aren't to punish people. Codes
Right.
are to create a behavior or change a behavior. And so that's what we need to be doing. And once again, I think that educational efforts at regional beach accesses and select neighborhood beach accesses where you're static, you got a display, you've got nice glossy pictures of issues that caused by holes. Turtle upside down, a hole is a very graphic image that changes people's behavior. Statistics on people that die in the holes they've dug themselves will be also a very compelling thing, for a parent to say, no, Junior, don't dig that hole that deep.
Is
Yeah.
that a signage that the county could consider?
Well, that's another thing too, is we don't want to, cover our beach accesses up with signage. When I got here, we had so many signs at the top and the bottom of the accesses that it looked like litter. And, the more signs, people don't read them. That's why it's important for, like I say, I call it a static display. I'm talking about a card table, a tent, and handing out some pamphlets or having some educational components by a person, and plus that's movable. We have a small van we're going to convert into what we call our mobile visitor center.
Brian,
It will be-
I'm gonna have to leave. Either I
Okay.
gotta excuse myself or we can
Well, let's
adjourn
wrap
and
up the meeting. We're
discuss
done, I
this.
think.
Okay.
Any more public comment, your public comments, right?
Yeah,
Well, I
we're,
would like to clarify exactly what the problem with the holes is. The problem is not digging the hole, the problem is filling it in.
Mhm.
And I don't honestly think there should be a size restriction on it, because when you're walking in the dark, your foot is only 7 or 8 inches large. Even just a 6-inch deep hole that's only 6 inches wide can break your ankle. So So I don't think there should be a size restriction on it. I think there should just be a small sign that says fill in all holes.
Good point.
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah.
If we would just ban Crimson Tide fans, all these
Yeah,
problems would go
it
away.
all go away, right? Okay, anything else, anybody?
It's all Alabama.
Okay, meeting's adjourned.
I love it. It's all Alabama.
I'm telling you.